Hi there, I'm Matt Williams and I'm one of the evangelists here at Datadog. Welcome to the next video in our series called Datadog 101. In the previous videos, we looked at working with the different components of the application and bringing data into Datadog with the agent and integrations. In this video, we look at the different ways you can make use of the data that you're collecting. I cover creating dashboards, the graphing options available, how to share dashboards, and much more. In the first video, I talked briefly about two types of dashboards, screen boards and time boards. The first dashboard we're going to create now is a time board. The most common type of visualization is a time series line graph. Just drag and drop the time series widget onto the dashboard to add it. Time boards have a very specific structure, so you're only able to add it to the grid of graphs. If you want to have more flexibility with the placement of graphs, you'll love the screen boards that we'll cover later. So a time series line graph displays a line for each group of data. By default, all hosts that report the metric are combined into a single line. You can choose any metric collected by your organization here, as long as the metric has seen new data in the last 24 hours. The next dropdown lets you select the subset of hosts from which to collect data. In a previous video, you learned about tagging agents and integrations. One of the tags I mentioned was role database. Here you could choose that same tag and see metrics only from the hosts running a database. Next, you can choose whether you want to show averages, maximums, minimums, or sums of the values of metrics. This selection determines how you're going to aggregate data. I'll go into more detail about aggregation in an upcoming video. After that, choose how you want to group metrics. The dropdown lets you choose any of the tags that have been assigned, either automatically or by you in the configuration files. For instance, choosing host will give you a line for each host. To the right of the grouping, there's a plus sign where you can add other functions. I go into all of the math functions in a separate video later on in this series. Below that, you can change the styling of the graph lines. I'll go over the main styles soon, like line versus bar versus area, but you can also choose the color scheme used, the line style, and the stroke thickness. Sometimes you want to show multiple metrics on a single graph, or combine metrics mathematically. To add another metric, click the Add Metric button below. If you click the Advanced link to the right, you can combine metrics using a variety of mathematical functions. It can be useful to overlay events on top of the graph as well. If this were a graph of CPU utilization of Docker hosts, then overlaying Docker containers as they're created and destroyed could be helpful. Next to that, you can add a marker. Markers are great to see exactly where the ideal range is for a metric. When looking at a large collection of graphs, it can be easier to understand when something is good or bad using these markers, especially when it's on a big screen on the wall. If you don't title the graph, the system assigns one to it. However, it's almost always better to give the graph a name that makes more sense in your environment. Appropriate graph names are useful for those who don't spend as much time looking at your dashboards. Before we leave this editor, let's take a look at three other tabs and links. Immediately to the left of the Edit tab is JSON. When you have a bit more expertise in the product, take a look at creating graphs using the JSON editor, where you have access to features not available in the GUI, like y-axis configuration. To learn more about those options, see the Graph Primer link to the left. In between JSON and the Graph Primer link is the Share tab. This section allows you to create an embed code to insert this graph into any web page that accepts an iframe. Since the embedded version doesn't inherit any time frame and sizing data from the parent page, you need to set those here. When you complete making your changes, click on Save and then create your next graph. As you're building out your time boards, you may wonder when one visualization is better than another. When is the best time to use a line graph like the one I just created? Line graphs are great when reporting a single metric from different scopes because you can easily spot outliers. Metrics from a single source or an aggregate are also great because you can easily see the evolution over time. Related metrics with the same units are also interesting, so they can spot correlations. When you use the markers, identifying a clear, acceptable domain is a benefit of line graphs. But when you start reporting from a lot of different hosts individually and the metrics are highly variable, the line graph can get messy. Related to the line graph is the stacked area graph. In fact, this is achieved just by changing the style of the line graph. Stacked areas are great when you need to see the sum as well as the contribution of metrics in a single graph. For example, comparing load balancer requests per AZ, or when looking at CPU total, user, system, idle, and stolen. One more style of graph available for time series graphs is the bar graph. Just choose to display bars instead of lines or areas. Bars are excellent for representing counts. Unlike gauge metrics, which represent an instantaneous value, count metrics only make sense when paired with a time interval, for example, 13 server errors in the past 5 minutes. Bar graphs require no interpolation to connect one interval to the next, making them especially useful for representing sparse metrics. Like area graphs, they naturally accommodate stacking and summing of metrics. These are great when showing sparse metrics like the number of blocked tasks in Cassandra's internal queues, or counts like failed jobs by data center in 4-hour intervals. Heat maps are also available in time boards. Heat maps show the distribution of values for a metric evolving over time. Each column in the chart represents a distribution of values during a particular time slice. Each cell's shading in that column corresponds to the number of entities reporting that value during that period. They're great to use when reporting a single metric by a large number of groups, such as showing web latency when you have a large number of web servers. Another type of graph is the distribution. Distribution graphs show a histogram of a metric's value across a segment of your infrastructure. Each bar represents a range of binned values, and its height corresponds to the number of entities reporting values in that range. Distribution graphs are closely related to heat maps. The key difference between the two is that heat maps show change over time, whereas distributions are a summary of a time window. Like heat maps, distributions visualize large numbers of entities reporting a particular metric. So they're often used to graph metrics at the individual host or container level. Distribution graphs are great if you want to convey general health or status at a glance, or to see variations across members of a group. Top lists are ordered lists that allow you to rank hosts, clusters, or any other segment of your infrastructure by their metric values. Because they're so easy to interpret, top lists are useful in high-level status boards. Compared to single-value summaries, top lists have an additional layer of aggregation across space, in that the value of the metric query is broken out by a group. Each group can be a single host or an aggregation of related hosts. Top lists are perfect when you want to spot outliers, underperformers, or resource hogs, or to convey KPIs in an easy-to-read format. Change graphs compare a metric's current value against its value at a point in the past. The key difference between change graphs and the other visualizations is that change graphs take two different timeframes as parameters, one for the size of the evaluation window and one to set the look-back window. Change graphs can be used to separate metric trends from periodic baselines, like database write throughput compared to the same time last week. We saw host maps in the first video, and you can add a smaller version of those to your dashboards as well. Finally, there are query values. These display the current value of a given metric query with conditional formatting, such as green, yellow, red backgrounds, to convey whether or not the value is in the expected range. The value displayed by a single value summary need not represent an instantaneous measurement. The widget can display the latest value reported, or an aggregate computed from all query values across the time window. Earlier in this video, you saw that you could overlay events on any graph when you're configuring it, but you could also do this at analysis time. If you have an idea of what might have caused a problem, enter the source or a few words about it at the top, and the events that match the search are displayed here on the left. As you hover over each event, you see them highlighted on the graphs on the right. When you find something, zoom in to get more detail. When you zoom in on any graph, the entire dashboard updates to reflect the new time span. You can use the forward and rewind buttons at the top to jump ahead or back by the chosen time period, or select one of the time periods from the dropdown. Now that you've found something interesting, annotate it to start the conversation with your colleagues. You can have that conversation in HipChat or Slack, VictorOps or PagerDuty, or even our event stream. I'll go into more detail about these integrations in the upcoming notification video. Now, let's switch over to the other dashboard type, the screen board. As I mentioned before, screen boards are excellent general status boards and are perfect for viewing the overall health and status of a service or entire infrastructure. To create a screenboard, just create a new dashboard and choose Screenboard. Screenboards share a lot of the visualizations available to timeboards. However, the biggest difference are that you can place and size the graphs anywhere you like, and you can control the period shown on a per graph basis. There are a few visualizations that are only available in Screenboards. The first of these is the event stream. The Screenboard event stream is just like the event stream page we saw in the first video. The event timeline is just like the aggregated section at the top of the event stream page. Again, we saw that in the first video. Alert graph and values show the current information from any configured monitor or alert. The check status illustrates the status for any configured check. The iframe widget lets you embed any iframe from another web page into this dashboard. Image, note, and free text are exactly what they sound like, allowing you to show an image and different types of text on your screenboard. Now you know what all the dashboard widgets do and how to create a dashboard. One of the benefits of screenboards that you don't get with timeboards is the ability to create a public URL of the page. You can then share this URL with others. The page is a read-only view, and since it's a screenboard, you can add descriptions to the page describing how the end user should interpret the board. At this point, I want to go back to a more advanced topic with regards to creating dashboards: templating. Let's say you want to have a dashboard that shows basic stats about your instances. And you also want a copy of that same dashboard that focuses on the different roles that you use, like the database and cache and web server. You can create a single dashboard and leverage template variables. To create a template variable, go to the gear icon and choose to edit template variables. Now enter a variable name, such as role. For the role group, I chose the role tag because I have assigned role database and so forth to each of my instances. Since I want to default to all of them, I can leave the default at star or asterisk. In each chart, change the from box to $role and click done. Now, whenever you choose a role, all graphs that are configured this way update to show only the metrics from the selected role. The next couple of videos go into more depth about two other concepts important to building great dashboards. The first will look at the various functions available, and the second will cover how we aggregate the data you're looking at in each graph. And that brings us to the end of this video. In future Datadog 101 videos, I cover functions, aggregation methods, and monitoring. I hope you found this session useful, and if you have any comments, please let us know. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.